I don't know how to start this video. A few months ago, my house burned down. Not like to the ground, but the house and everything in it was completely destroyed. 1 minute, I'm editing a thumbnail, and the next minute, I'm in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The last few months have been a real roller coaster, but somehow it wasn't all bad. It ended up being the biggest growth experience of my entire life. I've made a few videos now since the fire without bringing it up, but every single time I felt like I was harboring this deep, dark secret. So I feel like I need to just get this story off my chest so I can just fully move forward. I just have to tell you. I just feel too weird not telling you what happened and just pretending like, oh yeah, everything's normal. So to start, I guess I should say who was in the house at the time that it happened. You have me, my boyfriend, my 2 dogs, Ducky and Blue, and my 2 cats, Teddy and Theo. So I had just taken a shower. I sat down on the couch to edit a thumbnail. As I get into it, I hear a very loud whistling sound, like a tea kettle. Now I don't drink tea. My boyfriend doesn't drink tea. So I yell up the stairs to him, "Are you making a tea? Is that sound normal?" Then he hears it too, and he says, "That's not normal." He bolts down the stairs as fast as he can. And then before either of us can even process any idea of what's happening, he opens the garage door to find the source of the sound. And all of a sudden there's this boom, and the whole thing has begun. Thick, black smoke immediately begins to fill the room, and it is already hot. From there, I just remember scrambling. I'm trying to get the dogs outside. He's trying to put out the fire, but we didn't realize that at that point, the entire front of the house was already on fire. So eventually, I get outside with my dogs on their leashes and I'm calling 911. Meanwhile, I'm watching my boyfriend run back into the house over and over to try to find our cats, while parts of our house are literally exploding into flames. And I've watched enough stuff on this to know that it's not usually the fire that gets you, it's the smoke inhalation. So I'm trying to talk to 911 while he's running in there for the 3rd or the 4th time. And I'm just like screaming and crying and yelling like, "Don't go back in there." And when I see my boyfriend again, he says, "I couldn't find them, but I got to the top of the stairs and everything was pitch black." And I cannot believe he got that far. That stuff is so toxic, it's like it pushes you back. It's strong, it's heavy, and it's like you can't fully stop yourself from breathing it in. It feels like it forces itself into your lungs and into your throat. And keep in mind, it had only been like minutes, seconds. In total, it only took the firefighters 4 minutes from the time that I called to get there. And you'd think that would be plenty of time, but it happens so fast. By the time the structure is on fire, you're literally like an ant in a bonfire. So the firefighters show up and they're like, "Is anyone still in there?" And I'm like, "My cats, please save my cats." And all I can remember is just standing there in just complete disbelief and terror that what is happening is real. And while this is happening, my yelling and screaming on the lawn is slowly bringing everyone in my neighborhood into the streets. People are coming outside and filling the streets as we all watch my house burn down. Then someone notices that the flames are creeping toward the propane tank on my barbecue, meaning there's basically a bomb on the front lawn. So the firefighters are like, "Get back, everybody get back, no one's safe here." And the next thing I remember is being escorted through the literal crowd that was in the streets to the ambulance. There had to be like 100 people that we were waiting through while my 2 dogs were literally glued to my legs. Neither of them made a peep the entire ordeal, and I think if you could have seen their skin, they would have been ghost white, because we are weaving through this massive crowd and both of them are just head forward, single file, just like. We reached the ambulance and I only inhaled a little bit of smoke, so I knew that I was okay. But my boyfriend, he got blasted in the face when he opened the door. His knuckles are burnt and all split open. He has holes in his clothes, a patch of skin gone on his nose, and it's all red like under here. So he really looked like he had directly breathed it in. So they're trying to get him into the ambulance, but all he cares about is the cats. He's insistent in staying nearby. He doesn't even want to break eye contact with the house in case there's anything he can do to help make sure that they're safe. Then this authoritative looking person with a uniform comes over and says, "Look, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's been too long. There's no way these cats are coming out alive. So I'm immediately just bawling my eyes out again. And my boyfriend just says, you don't know my cats. And what do you know? A few minutes go by and the whole neighborhood crowd is shouting that the firefighters pulled a cat out. And someone comes up to me at the ambulance and says they saved a cat. And I'm like, oh my God, what color? And they're like, gray? And I'm like, oh my God, it's Teddy. Of the two, I thought for sure Teddy would be the one that we would lose because in this type of scenario, I figured he would hide, but someone in the crowd passed me him and the ambulance let us give him oxygen like right away. And finding Teddy also gives us hope for our other cat, Theo. When at the same time, the same uniform guy comes over and says, all right, well, it's been way too long now. There's no way the other cat's coming out. But what do you know? Minutes later, again, the crowd is like, the cat, the cat. And someone comes up to me and says, they found your other cat. He's underneath the fire truck. So I run over there, I get down, and I see that the firefighters are trying to use their helmets to get him out from behind one of the wheels of the fire truck. And I see Theo, and he's like soaked. He's covered in soot, and he's breathing really heavily. And then finally, one of the firefighters reaches him with their hat and he takes off. So I'm chasing him down into a neighbor's backyard and he's running, trying to get underneath their fence. So I'm yelling to him over and over, Theo, stop, Theo. He turns around and I will never forget the look on his face. He's standing in the middle of the yard with a face just like, I can't even imitate it. Just like a face of just like, what the fuck just happened? Like just, he looks like a complete ghost. And he's not even really looking at me. He's like staring right through me. And I pick him up and he collapses into my arms and like kind of felt like a sigh of relief. Later, I found out that he actually escaped the house by himself. He ran out the front door, which was basically on fire, and underneath the fire truck. And he was in the house for a long time. It was hard to say how long because time is so weird in these instances, but way longer than my first cat. And he looked it. He really looked like his whole soul was spooked. But yeah, the guy must have felt kind of silly being that both cats made it out after he proclaimed their doom both times. I don't get why you would say it again. Anyway, then we're finally getting ready to go to the hospital in the ambulance. My parents arrived and they took my dogs back to their house and they took my cats to the emergency vet. And they also brought us like a sweater and shoes because we were both wearing our pajamas in the streets. Like I was wearing my boyfriend's t-shirt and pajama pants, no shoes, no socks, no bra, no underwear in the streets. And I remember sitting in the ambulance, finally getting a good look at my boyfriend. And he looked so different. His eyes were so wide and his hair looked almost like it was like blown back, like a cartoon character who'd been bombed. His face was all red from the fire and he had a big patch of skin missing on his nose and underneath his nose. He was so clearly spooked and wired from the whole thing, and it was just so surreal to have a visual of him like that. I'm so lucky my partner is like, first off, he was clutch as hell. He kept a level head the whole time and did everything that he could to try to save us and our pets. Not to mention he behaved so heroically, like stupidly, okay, yes. But he ran back into a very burning building multiple times to save our cats. I was just so proud of him. He was really like amazing. And in the ambulance, we were hopped up on adrenaline, alternating between crying and laughing. But from the very beginning, like I'm talking right there, we decided that we were going to keep a positive spirit about it and that we were not going to let this break us. We were like, we have each other, we have the animals, it's just stuff, we're going to figure this out, it's going to be okay. We were just really pepping each other up and focusing in on the fact that we all survived until the paramedics start asking him more questions, checking his vitals. Then we get to the hospital and they immediately take him away to another room. Then the doctor comes back and says to me, we need to put him in a coma for 48 hours for smoke inhalation. We've also already administered the drugs, so say goodbye to him, but try not to look too concerned. And I'm just like, sorry, what? What's going on? And they're telling me he's fine, it's just a precaution, but my mind is spinning out a 48-hour coma. What if he dies? What if you never see him again? And you have to like physically stop your mind from completely spinning out. So I put on a happy face and I say goodbye to him and I go back and sit in the hospital chair alone. Just trying to process what the fuck just happened and what is about to happen to my life. When the landlord calls and I realize that I didn't have tenant insurance. I thought I had it, but I didn't. I know how stupid that sounds. I don't know what happened. So yeah, even if you're renting, make sure that you have insurance. Please learn from my stupid mistake. Because if you do have insurance, then in addition to replacing your stuff, they'll also give you somewhere to live. But if you don't, you better line up somewhere to live real quick. And for me, thankfully, my parents came and picked me up and took me back to their house. And the moment I got there, I opened the door and my dog Ducky acted like I returned from war. Like, you know those videos of soldiers coming home from deployment and their dogs freak out? Ducky did exactly that. I have never seen her act anything like that before. She made sounds she's never made before. She jumped higher than she's ever jumped. She was basically like, "You're alive." It was so cute. Anyway, fast forward. Everyone lives. My cats only ended up needing to stay the weekend in the hospital, and they both made a full recovery. We were told that even when they left the hospital, that at any point they could just completely turn and that would be it, but they are both 100% healthy now. My boyfriend was totally fine, and they even let him out like a full day early, and his injuries were pretty minor and they healed up really, really quickly. I was fine, the dogs were fine. The house, however, not fine. So I have some videos that I'll show you guys in just a second. We have no idea how it happened. The fire investigator gave me a few different reasons, but couldn't determine how exactly it happened. But something in the garage lit on fire and was apparently on fire for a full hour before we discovered it. And when I arrived home the next day, I was not prepared for what I saw. I knew the firefighters got there really quickly, so I'm thinking, okay, well, obviously I can't move back in, but I'm assuming the house is going to be overall okay. But I didn't realize that in addition to the fire, there's the water that they pump into your house. This is what you see when you walk in the front door. And most of the reason it looks so insane is that the ceiling has fallen down and coated everything in there in this wet black mush. That mush was everywhere. It was wet, it was gross, it had nails sticking out of it, and it was on top of all my stuff. And actually, the room that I used to film my YouTube videos in was one of, if not the most destroyed rooms in the entire house. First, here's that little blue chair that my dog used to sit on. You can actually see it lit on fire at some point. And right here is where that chair actually is, but you can't see it from this angle. I had to literally crawl over that stuff to even get around there. Because the whole ceiling, and not just the ceiling, the roof has come down on top of everything. As well as I think that part fell forward, like that back wall there would have been your old view when you were watching my channel. With the shelves and the books and the plants, that was all right there. In total, I pretty much lost everything I've ever owned, such as my Soul F85 treadmill. Rest in peace, my friend. And I think the thing I'm most sad about is my entire book collection. I didn't have anything rare or like first edition, but for me, when I read a book and I have an experience with it, it's really meaningful to me. Like, I still think about books that I loaned to people because I like so much and they didn't return them. You could see some of my books in my set, but that was a fraction of all the books that I own. But it's okay. Books are like one of the easiest things to replace. But I was able to save a few very meaningful things from the house, this necklace being one of them. But probably most importantly, my behavior change course. I swear to God, this is not a plug. I know it sounds like it, but I swear on my life. I have spent the last 2 years working on it. It's basically my life's work in one container. So for it to be lost, like that type of loss, the time and just what it is would just have been so devastating. And I did not have a single file backed up on the cloud. I thought it was gone for sure. And in the house, we lost every single electronic except this one and some other stupid one. But I walk into my boyfriend's office where I knew that it was, and this room is totaled. His monitors are to the left, full of mush. His laptop is sitting on the ground. I had to like literally dig it out and it is full of the mush. But in the center of his desk, untouched by any water, was his wallet, including one piece of my ID, which was a game changer. Like, the difference between one piece of ID and 0 piece of ID is major. And the hard drive, untouched, no water. Just in this center point, just no water here. Everywhere else is soaked. If that is not the universe looking out for me, I don't know what is. But yeah, everything else, gone. I literally lost everything I've ever owned. And losing your stuff does suck a lot. It's very expensive, but it's not the most painful. So that's the fire. But then there's the life after the fire. Because the thing about a house fire is, it's obviously this huge and devastating event, but it's kind of just the kickoff for your life being messed up afterwards. I remember being in the ambulance and having that feeling of, oh my God, I just can't wait to go home. And then realizing I am never going home again. The life that you lived there is just over, and you didn't get to say goodbye. And I wouldn't necessarily say the whole thing was a near-death experience and that at no point did I think I am about to die. But my body definitely deployed the chemicals it reserves for, well, you might die type scenarios. You're pumped full of adrenaline and whatever else, and that physically messes you up for a while. I was in a store a couple days later and it was loud and busy, and I actually started shaking a little bit. Like, your system is just so fried. I guess you're probably technically physically traumatized for a little while. And it's hard to put into words what exactly you go through when your house burns down. Like, you lose your stuff, obviously, and lots of money and time. But the biggest thing I think is that you're suddenly kicked down Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, just yanked right out from under you. So you go from working on your life to scrambling for some sort of sense of security. And the first month, you're really just focused on survival needs. You're like, okay, how do I get back to square one? The day after the fire, I went to the store and bought shoes and underwear because you have zero anything and you don't realize how many little things come together to make your life, how many little things you need to just walk out the door when you have nothing. So you actually have to put your life back together piece by piece. And in that process, you lose your sense of self for a while, big time. You're like stripped down to nothing mentally. You are so vulnerable. You're not in control. You're suddenly living this completely different life with no idea when it will be over. And this causes you to feel such a range of emotions even now, because your life is suddenly completely reset. There's your life before the fire, and there's your life after the fire. There's this perfect line dividing these two lives, which is just such a strange feeling. And you know, I had a lot of anxieties before the fire. I had my problems, I had my life issues. An example being 100% of the reason I don't make more YouTube videos is because I am so stuck in my head that the process is completely choked out by me. But something like this makes you realize how many of your problems really and truly only exist inside your head. How many issues you thought were so big and so real and so scary that were actually a joke. I literally multiple times laughed to myself that I wished I could have some of my old problems back. Life's like, so let me get this straight. You think what you're going through right now is worthy of anxiety. Okay, let me just show you what some real problems look like. This whole thing just makes you reflect on everything ever. And I was already pretty aware of myself, but something about this just took it to a whole nother level. And it ended up being by far the biggest growth experience of my entire life. Little issues would really get to me before. I'd get really stressed over little issues. I had a major avoidance problem. I just always felt so overwhelmed, not quite capable enough. A major chip on my shoulder as a person and not as confident as I should be. But I decided very early on that I was going to use this experience to grow. My boyfriend and I had actually been reading Epictetus' Discourses the week before it happened, which was so insanely lucky. He's a Stoic philosopher whose entire philosophy is, look, I don't get to control the things that happen to me, and bad stuff will happen to me. But no matter what, I get to control how I react, always. And this is my freedom in life, to choose my perspective, and to therefore choose my path. And actually, Viktor Frankl, the famous psychologist who survived Auschwitz and had his entire family murdered there, said something really, really similar. He said, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So I literally latched onto these ideas. I just kept reminding myself, just because my house burned down, it doesn't mean that my life is over. It doesn't mean that I have to be miserable. It doesn't have to take me out. I can find a way to use this to be better, and I'm gonna choose the perspective that this entire thing is a sick test from the universe to make me a better human being. And it's not like adopting this attitude made it easy, but it definitely made it way easier to deal with. It became this thing of like, okay, either this is the worst thing that ever happened to me and my life is completely ruined, or this is the biggest growth opportunity of my entire life, and there's some sort of something waiting in here for me if I can find it. The fire actually forced me to deal with bigger problems than I've ever dealt with before, back to back to back. It just opened up this huge can of worms, and suddenly I'm dealing with all these like A-tier problems, like problem after problem after problem of a caliber I've never had to deal with in my life. But both my boyfriend and I, like, we had our moments, don't get me wrong, but overall we stayed extremely positive and we did not wallow in our issues for even a day. And I think being forced to stand up straight and be strong and reckon with issues like this day after day, it made me a better person. It made me stronger. It made me realize that I was capable of way more than I ever dared to consider. And as a result, I feel like a more capable human being than ever before. I have more control over my mind and of my behavior than ever before. I believe in myself more than ever, and I feel proud of who I am as a human being. And I had so many realizations about everything, but in particular, just about how much I've still been holding myself back in life and how much more I had in me than I ever thought. So yeah, it was really fucked up. And it was emotional and very difficult and all of that. But a lot of good did come out of it. And I think we'll still continue to come out of it despite the losses that it did create. And you know, in addition to experiencing the lowest lows I've ever felt, I also experienced some of the highest highs. 2 days after the fire, I wrote in my journal, "We lost everything, but somehow I still feel lucky." And I was definitely a little bit manic, but I did feel lucky. I felt genuinely grateful to be alive. I would constantly think, holy shit, we all survived this thing. I've never experienced real gratitude just for being alive like that before. And the fact that every single one of my animals survived, that's pretty rare, you know? All 4 of them, that's rare. I'm just so grateful because I don't know if Epictetus could have saved me from that one. It would just be a way different scenario if I was coping with that loss at the same time. And that's the situation a lot of people find themselves in when they go through a house fire. So I had my animals and my boyfriend, and I had all the people around me who were so loving and selfless, my family, my boyfriend's family, my friends. And, you know, we went to see our house the next day, and someone had already gone to the store and bought us like a basket of like socks and t-shirts, and they put it on the front lawn in a basket. And during the fire, neighbors came out with like blankets and water bottles. Even now it makes me tear up. So sweet. The guy at the rental car place like went out of his way to help us and kept it open for like an hour for us because we didn't know it closed at noon. And when people are so kind to you during an experience like that, it is felt so deeply. I've just never felt just such a profound experience of gratitude, I guess, or just I don't know, I can't describe it. The way that kind of kindness makes you feel is just very profound. The paramedics were amazing. One of them got me coffee in the hospital. The police officer called me and he was so sweet. Yeah, overall, yeah, people are amazing. Anyway, that is how the past few months have gone for me. I am so excited to just be back to the channel and making content again. But I am very glad I waited this long to make this video because up until recently, I've been feeling kind of like weird, war torn. I did film a few times and I'm sitting there filming about some TV show or something, feeling like a weird alien. But now I'm back. I'm living in a place of my own once again. I'm working on building a new background so it's not just a blank wall. Let me tell you, I am so sad about my old background. I feel like I can't just recreate it identically. That's kind of messed up. It's like a bad vibe. So all the spring feeling and like the plants and the flowers represented growth, and then the books and the chair represented learning. So it's like growth through learning. Now you know how extra I am. So the new one will have to be similar because I can't think of a better thing than that, but it will have to be different too. Also, for those who are waiting for my course, it is 100% ready. I just had to wait until my life was a bit more normal to launch. So look out for that for real this time. And if you haven't seen my most recent willpower video, you can see it here. It's based on this crazy 100-year-old book on willpower. And the type of comments I'm getting suggest to me that it's just as good as my discipline one, so go and check it out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one, which will be very soon.